This time on Custom Works, we're doing a bit of welding, bit of fabrication, a little bit of rust repair, and we're going to have a bit of a tour of the workshop, and we're going to look at some of the tools that makes all this magic, makes all this tragic happen. Let's get to the workshop. So, the floor in what is going to be the 60s truck taxi pickup thing. And as you can see, a lot of holes there, a lot of old plating, which I assume is over holes, and a lot of dodgy looking welds. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to repair this footwell and get rid of all of this, because the MOT man ain't going to pass this. I can see the floor, it's like the Flintstones. So then, I've made this cardboard template and it fits nicely in here. And what I'm planning on doing is, I'm going to come up to this point here. I know this has been plated, but I'll seam weld around there and make that look a lot nicer. And then all of this bit, I'm going to cut out and replace, because even though that's a hole there, there's going to be holes under this. This is all rubbish. And then up here, in this part, and I'll do that as a separate thing. So I'll cut all of this out, get some nice steel back in it, and then I shall deal with you. Oh yes. But sometimes cutting out big can save you a lot of time and makes all the welding a lot nicer. Because I'm thinking that this is going to be like a structural piece, and then over here is going to be structural up to that trans tunnel. There's our template for a plate. Let's cut this out in steel and make this floor better again. So, I've marked this out. This is the shape of our template there. Use this vise to weight it down, and what I'm going to use a plasma cutter to cut that shape out. Okay then, so I've marked out in the floor where the plate's got to go, so now I'm going to cut that floor out with the angle grinder. So here we are, all cut out. We can see under here, the chassis is in excellent condition. Nothing wrong there, and there never is anything wrong with the chassis on these. For some reason, they made the chassis from metal that will never rust, and the rest of the car out of the worst steel in the world. There is plenty of rot over there as well, which I'd not really anticipated, but what I'll do is I think I'll put the plate in and get something that I can weld to, then I'll cut that out and make a new bit. But for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to sand and clean all the way around this, so that when I weld, everything is to new, fresh, bright metal. So, we have got a couple of problems though. Just here, if we can see, this metal, that's no good, and the grinder sort of highlighted that, and I'd not seen before. But what we'll have to do here is probably run a second plate down there, because that is just too thin there. And then we'll weld across here. But as this plate just sits there, what we need to do is add a bit of rigidity. So I'm going to run it through the bead roller. Let's get to the bead roller. Okay then, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some bead rolls in this. I'm just going to do it freehand, and I'm on my own, so I'll be turning it and doing it. If this was going to be on show, I would wait till someone else was here to turn the wheel. But they're not, and it's all going to be hidden under the carpet. So, it's going to be okay. Right then, let's do some bead rolling. I've done probably not the straightest bead rolling in the world ever, but it's made the piece of metal a lot more rigid. I'm going to start tacking that in, finding its sort of place of where it's going to fit and seeing what extra plating I'm going to have to do around it. Here is our welded repair. We've removed a lot of floor there. If you look here, we had to replace this bit that goes up, make that, and then there's another flap to a bit more rust. I also put this flap over the end, just so that's double thickness there. I welded underneath, then put that over, and then we've come right up to the transmission tunnel down here. I put that plate on there because there's some other some holes that have been drilled, I don't know why. Yeah, there we are. Now, all the rest of the floor is covered in surface rust, but it's nice and solid. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cover this in some sort of rust inhibitor. We've welded all that steel into that floor pan and everything is really, really solid. Like, wow, it's going to be there forever. And it's a lot thicker sort of steel. It's I think that's 1.2 mil, something like that. So I've cutting it with the plasma cutter, makes things nice and quick. Now that is done and that is all in, but what we need to do is let's not have what happened there happen again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to coat everything with this rust converter stuff. You know the sort of stuff, paint it on rust, rust turns all black and sort of like coalesces back together and is a nice, hard, stable sort of surface that you can paint over. Now I'll be doing it on everything on that. I'll be working it into all the joins, all around the world, everywhere. And when we get that car up on the ramp, I'll also go around with a tub of this and I'll paint every single piece from the back side as well. And this is where things really start to get very complicated and important. If you ever repair anything that's steel, but you're not painting everything on the back, then that's where it's going to rust, and it will absolutely rust, and it will rust within hours of you finishing the job. Just as a tip as well, when you're using this stuff that turns rust back into like, you know, it like re-solidifies it, always pop what you're going to use in an old aerosol cap. Never double dip. Don't be getting that brush in the stuff because it'll send it all to jelly, because it like rust like sends it off. Like rust is the catalyst for this stuff. So always in something else and then slap it on. So once I've painted on the underside of this and it's all been sort of like, you know, stone chips and stuff, should be good for ages yet. Really thick gauge, all seam welded, cut all the rot out, and of course the rust inhibitor. Alright, so a few people down in the comments have asked, what is the workshop and how was it made? Well, I'm here to tell you. Also, this is probably like the worst time ever for any sort of workshop tour, because there's a car just about to be finished, that always causes lots of bits of stuff to be laying around, and there's a car we've blown into a million pieces in there, so it's not the tidiest by a long way. But anyway, this is how I built the workshop. What I did, in my other house I had a workshop, but it wasn't quite big enough, bit bigger than a double garage. So me and Kirst, what we did, we decided that we would move to somewhere with a bigger garden. And we were lucky to find this house. It's like 2 houses are missing at the side of it. It's not a very big house, but it did have a big garden. So, first thing, you've got to leave your entire house and everything behind. No, you've just got to move house, or you've just got to have a garden, or at least just a garden where you can get in a car in it, because who needs a lawn when you could have a workshop? So first thing I did, I levelled a piece of land. Then, what did I do then? I think then the ground was pretty solid, so I just laid down a big sheet of polythene. But once I had my polythene down, I was ready to lay my concrete. I ordered in 19.5 cubic metres of concrete. Even the man at the place was like, "What are you building?" I was like, "Shed base." And he was laughing, saying, "You must have measured it wrong." I had measured it right. It took 19.5 cubic metres. And it's about 4 inches thick, this concrete is. Probably some areas about 3 inches. And there's no expansion joints in it either. If it cracks, it cracks. You know, I'm not building the fanciest workshop in the world. I'm building somewhere to build the cars. The cars are the thing. Workshop, I don't really care. As long as there's ample light, I'm warm and dry, I'm saying that's a win. So once I've got the slab down, I made the slab way bigger, well, 1 metre bigger all the way around. That's planning regulations. I built the workshop, and for it to be a permitted development, it could only be 2.8 metres high. That's why I've now got the meat wagon in a tent outside, because it's about this much off actually fitting in there. But hey, that's it. That's all I could build. So the actual workshop, a lot of people have said, is it made of shipping containers? And it really does look like we're in a giant shipping container when you're in here. But what it is cladding that goes on buildings. It's got like 6 inches of insulation. Sometimes it's metal both sides. This has got like fiberglass on the inside, steel on the outside, and then tons of insulation. So in this workshop, if I heat it with like one fan heater, even though it's quite a large space, I can heat it in like minutes. Also, barely any framework is needed with this stuff. It'll span like 6 metres on the roof. Really minimal timber work. Now I just stood it up and dropped the roof on, a little bit like you'd make at a house of cards, and I stuck it all together with expanding foam. You can really get a big building up really quick. This took me a week and a half, but I had 2 lads helping me. But we got it all up in a week and a half, and I was in here warm and dry and working. So, I've also had questions of why are there acros holding the roof up? Well, when I first built this, I did put, when I built it, I put a lot of timber in. And later I realised I don't need as much timber as is in. So this actually just holds up the timber frame, and the roof is perfectly good amongst it. But the reason it's ended up like this, there used to be a wall and then some doors and a separate spray booth. But as projects change, I've moved walls around, and now what I do, I use these gazebo sides, which just velcro up to these purlins, and that will isolate a section of the workshop so I can paint a car or do some really dusty stuff. And then here, because this piece of timber, because it's got the timber rack on it and everything, sags, what I was going to do, I was going to put a prop to hold it up forever, but it would always be in my way, like a pillar anywhere across here seriously gets in my way. So I use acros, and I've got 2, because I can move one and then the other and then the other, and I can have cars any way round in here. I don't have to worry about supporting the roof. At the end of the day, if these weren't here, just this bit of timber would sag a bit. I don't think anything's going to fall down. There's nothing above it. It just keeps the rain off. So that's why there's acros in here. So then, takeaways from this are trench flow self-levelling concrete, which for 148 square metres, me and one other man and a concrete pump laid this in 2.5 hours. So that's the stuff you want for your floor. And then all the stuff, I don't know where anyone is, either in this country or other countries, but there's a place in Derby called Action Clad, and they sell offcuts from cladding on big buildings. And like, this whole place was built with like 1/4 of the offcuts off a massive project. So they say offcuts, but it's just unreal the amount of stuff they've got there. So that's Action Cladding, Derby, and Lafarge Aggregates, and Trench Flow. Put all that together with loads of expanding foam, and you'll have a really warm, comfortable workshop to work in. Of course here, that is always the thing of cost. Now I've just moved house. We moved from a larger house down to this smaller house, and we change everything around. So I did have a bit of money at the time, and this cost about £6,500–7,500 to build. But for that money, the amount of things I've built in here and the amount of days when it's been raining or super cold outside and I'm in here working and all warm and nice, it's, oh my God, it's a bargain. It's an absolute bargain. I know it's loads of money, but it's just an absolute bargain. I love it. Also, you might have seen when I'm in this area, and all this is like a gazebo that I've tacked onto the side of the workshop just to build this. It's got a big gap around the bottom, which I'm going to be filling in once I've got the A40 out of here and out and it's gone, and then I'll do this and it'll be a bit warmer. But yeah, these gazebos, if you can buy a gazebo that's 4 metres wide, you can build a car in there, as long as it's not like 2 foot long. You know, it's got to be as long as a car as well. But you buy the 4 metre wide gazebo, you can easily work on a car. And these come in at about, Kirst, how much are they?
£450.
About £450. But you could easily build a car from chassis up in one of these. I must admit, past few weeks I've not worked on the meat wagon because my God, it's been really cold in here. But if through the summer and stuff, or if you're in sort of sunnier climes, one of these would be perfect. Right then, as far as kit that I've got, I'm going to have a quick wander around the workshop. I'm going to point out things and tell you if, like, that's a luxury, oh my God, you really need that. So, starting off on the bench. Obviously, always good to have a decent cordless drill. I've got a driver as well that puts screws in, and that's worth having. Things like jigsaws and that, you've probably got somewhere. I've got this nice fancy cordless one, but if you have one that plugged in, that'll do. I've got a die grinder. They're a lovely bit of kit to have, but you don't really need one to build a car. One thing that I did buy that I can barely live without is my plasma cutter. As you can see, I do a lot of body work, so everything I have looks like it's like a million years old, but it's not a million years old. That is just so good. And like I was plating that floor the other day. You can use really heavy gauge steel on everything because it just cuts. I think that cuts easier than you can cut cardboard with a knife. It's just so easy. And like I say, it doesn't matter if it's like, you know, 0.8 or 2 mil steel, it'll go through it. That'll go up to like sort of 8 mil. You ain't gonna be doing much on a car with 8 mil unless you're making brackets. But for bodywork cutting and stuff, it is fantastic. So it's a bit of a stretch because they're quite expensive, but plasma cutter is pretty good. I also, obviously, because I sort of do this for a living, I have got a pillar drill and a lathe. They're luxury items though. You want to build a car, you don't need any of that. So let's see what else we've got around. Well, I've got a really untidy roll cab full of like junk tools. Nah, some of them are alright. And I've got this saw. I use that mainly for cutting all the box section I use in the taxis and stuff like that. Great for cutting steel. If you've got something really big to cut as well, this will cut and you can go off and get on with other things, so it's like a second pair of hands. Alright, moving into this absolute bomb site. I own a MIG welder, and I've got to say, when I built Dualitron, I'd had MIG welders in the past, but they'd broke down. When I actually built Dualitron, I didn't have a MIG welder, I just had a stick welder. But I'll come to that in a bit. But yeah, MIG welder. You can buy quite a small MIG welder if you're just doing car bodywork stuff. I sometimes do bits of chassis work, so I've got a bit more powerful welder so I can get good penetration, but any old MIG will do you. Right, and so, like I say, I've got an impact driver, I've got a battery bolt gun as well. I have 2 angle grinders, I've fancy cordless ones, but literally, angle grinder, like 15 quid from Screwfix. It'll do all the same things, it's just got a wire off of it. With the angle grinders as well, when you're buying angle grinders, if you're going to do a lot of work on a car, don't just buy one that's like 300 quid, buy 2 that are 150 quid. Having one with a sanding blade and one with a cutting blade it's life-changing. That genuinely is worth spending the money and having 2. I always have one with a sander, one with a cutter. You don't have to change the blade, just do. You can really get on with work really quick that way. And also, you may have seen the literal love of my life. It's a Sawzall with a double battery. This thing is just absolutely insane. Cuts everything, brilliant on steel work. Like I say though, this one's quite expensive, and it's like the battery one. You can buy these super cheap plug-in and they'll do all the same thing. You don't have to go, you know, super cool. Just get whatever you can to build a car. To make all the air tools work, I've got like a sander. I think that's it as far as air tools go. Sander, and then I use the compressor for spraying and stuff. But as far as air tools go, to power all of that, I've got 2 compressors in a room over there that originally was a small shed in the garden, but then I just built everything over it because I thought it'll make a great paint store. And that's what it does, it's got the paint in the compressors. But if you can afford a compressor, compressor's really good. However, like I say, when I built Dualitron, I don't know any of this stuff. So then, that is my workshop and some of my kit. I probably forgot some stuff because I probably have. You might be thinking, well, I've got loads more kit than that. Or you might be thinking, I could never afford that much kit in that workshop. Well, either point of view, literally doesn't matter. When I built Dualitron, I built that on my front garden. At night, I covered it in a tarp. If it was raining, I bought a big umbrella from like B&Q or Home Depot, if you're in the US. I bought this big umbrella and I welded it to an old car tyre and I would work under that in the rain to build that car. I did it all outside. Tools I had then, I had a cordless drill. I did have for some time on that a sander, but I used to use just a plug-in angle grinder with a sanding disc to get the shape. And probably a handsaw. Literally, I'm talking the most basic elements. And everyone used to say to me, once I'd sculpted that body, there was like aluminium, fiberglass and filler. I'd sanded it all into shape. They said, have you got loads of special tools to make all of this? And hand on heart, that whole car is from a block of wood with 40 grit wrapped round it and just sand it. If you get a block of wood, wrap some 40 grit round it and start sanding, the thing you're sanding will change shape. And if you do it enough, you can make that into an entire car. So as far as kit goes, really don't worry. If you want to build a car, you will build a car. And there is no minimum or maximum amount of kit that will ever stop you doing that. So if you want to do it, do it. So another thing with Dualitron, for years I'd wanted to build a car. Years and years and years. And I was waiting for enough time to do it, enough money to build it, and also somewhere to build it. And I was waiting for those 3 things to coalesce, as if in like a galactic ballet, and everything would align, and then I'd walk into a lovely workshop and build a car. It's absolute nonsense. These things are never going to happen. When I built that car, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the time, I had nowhere to build it. But guess what? What? I don't know. Was it like 12, 15 years later? Our car's still on the road. I did finish it. And I think if the car is in you, the car will get built. Don't try and wait for everything to come together. You've sometimes just got to do it. But like with that car, I built, the base car was £200. And then that was it. I'd spent my £200. I had no other money. So I actually, I set up a quiz at my local pub and I was a quiz master and I got paid £50 a week for that, and that's how I built Dualitron, by asking questions about music. Okay, and so you might have found that useful. You might have thought, what the hell is this man on about? This is just nonsense. Well, as I often say, there's nothing you or I can do about it now. You've heard it. Not going to unhear it here. But then again, if you have heard it and you think, you know what, I'm going to build a car, then good for you. Okay then, so that's it for this week. Hey, did I say that the enzyme's for sale? If you want it, have a look around. I'm sure you'll see it for sale somewhere. But yeah, oh, beautiful car. I've never had any problems with it. No, basically all the problems are sorted now and then I'm getting rid of it. Why did I do all that work but then never actually enjoy the final thing? Oh well, the mysteries of life go on. So that's it for this week. I'll be back next week with loads more brilliant custom work stuff. Loads more fascinating things. But until then, don't forget, click subscribe, big thumbs up, do that love heart thing. I think that's the like. Do all of those things essentially. Get me up to 1,000, subscribers. That'd be amazing. Between now and next week, time will elapse. Until then, thank you very much and good night.